First episode of the Tattoo Centers podcast. I'm your host, Eric. We got my co-host, Chris. He's off the screen right now. Look, there's his big ass head. Then we got my brother,
the Reverend Most
also Pastor David from Shepherd Community. This episode we're going to talk about some forms of religion and tattoos. Mainly the Christianity religion, because he's a Christian and I'm a Christian. But there seems to be some kind of disconnect between tattoo artists and Christianity. People just think it doesn't exist. So we'll test it out on that in a second. Right now we're going to do some advertising. I own Still Rod Tattoo and the founder of Tattoo Centers Apparel. All this is brought to you by Perez Production and Loose Screws Entertainment. Go ahead, Dave. And say something about your church. Give us a little something.
Yeah, so
what do you guys do?
We are on the east side of Indianapolis, around Sherman and Washington. It's Shepherd Community Church of the Nazarene. And so we're into the Nazarene denomination. We have a church of about 100 or so. On a good Sunday, if everyone shows up, we might have a little bit more. But
okay. All right. So, on this podcast, we got some questions as tattoo artists to Christian people. I wrote them down, but we got a few questions, man. So there's a disconnect when people think Christians are solely against tattoos and Christians demonize tattooing in general. This is my brother. He's a pastor, and he has tattoos. Why don't you show him some of your tattoos?
Well, I got some on my arm here, and then some on my back, and I got about 9 or 10 of them.
Now, did you get the tattoos before you were religious?
Before and after.
Before and
So I got some of mine. Well, most of them were done by my brother. I have a couple, I think, by my uncle. But the majority, I think, I had before. But I have gotten several since becoming a Christian.
So, why do Christians not why do the majority of older Christians, the older values of Christianity, why do you think that, in your opinion, they do not they're opposed to tattooing, they don't like tattoos?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to like what they were taught, what they were learned. I think you are seeing a shift from older Christians, the boomers, right? The boomers who are getting older and in their 60s, 70s. That crowd may be more opposed to it than a lot of the younger crowd. I know at our church, many of our folks have tattoos. Actually, when I preach, they prefer me to wear shirts without sleeve, not sleeveless shirts, but shirts without long sleeves, so that my tattoos are shown, so that people can see that at our church that's a welcome. Like, it's okay if you have tattoos, it's not frowned upon. But I think you do see that in the older crowd, and I think it comes down to, again, what they were taught growing up, and some scripture that may have been used throughout them being taught. So like, I know a lot of people go back to the Leviticus verse, right, where it talks about not marking your body and things like that. And I think that we use that verse to kind of justify a fear, right? A fear of people with tattoos. Because that was also one of those things, right? People who got tattoos were criminals, right?
Criminals, gangbangers. Back in the day, it used to be outlaws. And all that stuff.
It wasn't Aunt Betty that sung in the choir at church that was getting tattoos. I think what some of the fear came down to, it was people who were associated with crime and things like that. And so I think a lot of that plays into it. But even in those verses, like in Leviticus. Again, they're used to justify a fear, and I think we know as Christians that fear isn't from God. That fear doesn't come from God, and fear is something that only God can really truly drive out, because God is love, right? And so love for another person trumps tattoos, trumps ethnicities, races, all of those things. And so I think just growing up with the fear of,
I like that point because in the history of tattooing, when I was in hair color art, I actually did a paper on tattooing. And before the invention of the electric tattoo machine, tattoos were a status that only the rich people could afford to go see these people that were given tattoos. And then once it became to the mass people, they were like, oh no, let's shine it out. We don't want it no more. So it used to be only for the wealthier class of people, and now you see it amongst everybody.
Yeah, I mean everybody. It's a cultural thing now. It's it transcends cultures, whether you're young, old, or whatever. Tattoos are a thing to do. It's a normal thing in our society now.
So why do you think that some Christians, and I'm sure you have them in your church and stuff, that what scripture are they most scared of? Like what does the Bible, in your opinion, actually say about actual marking your body with the beast? Like, what is a mark of the beast?
I think in Scripture it talks about, in Leviticus again. That's the main one, right? Let's face it. That's the one that everyone likes to go to.
It was it New Testament, Old Testament?
It's Old Testament, and it talks about marking your body. And I think when you get into like tracing back the original translation, it's more along the line of like scarring your body, so cutting it and things like that. And it was an act of worship. And what people were doing, God's people, were starting to cut themselves and tattoo themselves to do as a sacrifice or worship to another god, such as Baal or something like that, right? And so I think that's where you're seeing this passage come about, and then we latch onto that, right? Oh, so it says no tattoos, so let's not do tattoos. But if you look at those verses, and I'll just read one because I got it right here on my handy dandy laptop. But it says do not cut the hair on the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. I don't know about you, but even though beards are trendy right now, a lot of people shave their faces and they trim their beards and things like that. It also talks about...
So if you took it literally, you'd have to grow your hair down to your butt.
Right, and you couldn't even mix clothing, right? There's a verse in here that says you can't mix fabrics. So you couldn't mix like cotton and wool, right?
Because I never knew that. I haven't read into that deep. Okay.
Yeah. So if you look at these verses at like face value with what they literally say, then I mean, yeah, you could see easily why tattoos would be frowned upon. But when you look deeper in the context of Scripture, then you start to see that the reason behind the verse being there. And it even says, like, after it talks about not tattooing your body, it says, "I am the Lord your God." And the reason why he's saying, "I'm the Lord your God," is because they were doing this for another God. And he's saying, you don't need to do this. I'm the Lord your God.
Can you give the exact scriptures if anybody wants to look it up on their own? Like you said, the most famous one would be Leviticus 19:28.
So if you read Leviticus 19, there's all kinds of laws in there for that one. And there's other, actually, there's a couple more, and I think I didn't look these up. I can look them up real quick, but if you look in Mark, there's a beautiful passage in there, and it's Jesus, right? If you buy a Bible that has the red words in it, those red words are usually really, really important. So
What's the red word? What's the red words mean?
The red words are typically Jesus's words.
Oh, okay.
And we know there's translations, right? There's different translations.
Of the Bible and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, I would encourage anyone, right? I've encouraged my own people when I preach from the pulpit that, hey, if I stand up here and I say something that you say, I don't know if that's scriptural, I always tell them, go check scriptural. Because the last thing I want to do from the pulpit is preach some sort of heresy that I've got to answer for. You know what I mean? When I reach those pearly gates, right?
Questions.
Yeah. So let's look real quick. And I'm not trying to turn this into like your guys' Sunday morning message, but I think when you get into it, you really got to look to Jesus too, right? Because that's who it's called, Christianity, right? We're the followers of Jesus Christ. Followers of the way. Yeah. And so you really got to turn to Jesus and what he says. And we know that he talks about he didn't come to abolish the law, right? To do away with the law. He came to fulfill the law. And so he is the fulfillment of those laws.
And just so you know, it is Sunday right now, so he just came from probably.
Yeah, I'm all
So
hyped
he's
up.
probably all in his
Yeah, he's
scripture
fired up right
guys.
now.
Don't worry.
Right. So here's a verse, and it's in Mark 7.
Mark 7.
And so it's the Pharisees, right? The Pharisees are trying to call out the disciples because they're eating without washing their hands.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we know disciples didn't carry around hand sanitizer on their keychain like everybody does these days.
Yeah, but they didn't have COVID back then. But
Right. So they were COVID free. No, they had much worse, but they still didn't carry around hand sanitizer. And so the Pharisees are calling them out for it. And this is just like the first couple of verses, right? This is Jesus, because the words are in red. He says, and Jesus, I was just talking to my wife about this, like sometimes he didn't mix words, right? He just called it as it was. And he says, Isaiah was right when he prophesies about you hypocrites, as it is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Jesus is always, always looking at the heart. So even with people that get tattoos, if your heart's not in the right place, when you get it, there's your problem.
Okay.
But it says they worship me in vain with their teachings are merely human rules. You have let go of the commands of God and are holding on to human traditions. And so that's the first part of this.
So if we break that down in tattoo world, you're talking about human traditions. So we're allowed to advance as a society and get tattoos and stuff. Like, do you think that some of the denominations in Christianity that are against tattooing, like hardcore against it, like protest tattooing, done with tattooing, you're a sinner, don't get tattooed?
I think anytime you hold on and tradition trumps what Jesus is saying, then you've got it out of order, right? Because even in our denomination, we have tradition. For example, one of the things that we're against alcohol, right?
Yeah.
But we're not against the alcoholic.
Okay, yeah.
And so,
because I drink alcohol.
right. So like, if someone drinks, we're not going to say, well, that person's bad, let's avoid them. Because that's exactly opposite of what Jesus would have done. Okay. Those are the people Jesus would have hung out with, right? The woman at the well was someone in that society people would not have talked to, right? She was the lady who, she was going to get water at this well at a time of day because no one else would be there, right? And Jesus met her there. And so like that's the Jesus that we should be seeking and we should be after. So if you're a Christian and you're saying you shouldn't hang around, avoid tattoo artists, avoid tattoos, avoid tattooed people, then absolutely you're not living a Christ-like life, because Christ would never ever do that.
He would quote you on that.
He would
You're
come
about to be the most hated pastor in the US.
Most pastors are hated these days for one reason or another. Let's face it.
Well, with your own people, though.
But you did. But again, you hold on to tradition too tightly. I'm telling you, Scripture is full of times when tradition became worshipped more than God. Right?
I don't know that much.
So
you
let's
took
say
colleges and stuff. I'm just sitting here absorbing your knowledge.
there was a right. So these snakes were biting the Israelites and killing them. Right, and this is Old Testament. And so God had them create this bronze snake that when they prayed to when they basically they were praying to God when they prayed to the snake, and the snakes that were biting and killing them would stop. And so basically that happened, right? But then over time, they started worshiping. It was less about God doing the miracle with the snakes, like not letting the snakes bite and kill them, and more about that statue. So they weren't worshiping God any longer. And so God then said, you got to get away from the statue, right?
Well, that's a false idol thing.
Exactly. But that's the same thing that tradition can become, right? Tradition can become that false idol. And so like, in the world, tradition was like tattoos were bad people, right? They were the criminals, and so you held on to that tradition, if you want to call it that, and started worshiping that idea as opposed to loving your neighbor, right? Because that's what we're ultimately called to do.
So, in your opinion, though, what's one of the biggest gaps between? Because in my world, I own a tattoo shop. I tattoo. I do all this fun stuff. I tattoo all kinds of people. Nothing's off the table when people come into my tattoo shop. Nothing. We talk about everything. Okay? They think that you guys just look down upon us as Christians, and you guys just, like I said, demonize us because we're tattooed, and so I have an employee, Dave Berry. He's tattooed all over. You guys know, everybody here knows Dave. He's tattooed all over. He got goat eyes and all kinds of stuff. Would you treat him the same as you would, let's say, somebody in your congregation that's not tattooed?
Here's what I can't speak for everyone. I think we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah,
This is,
that's
I love
your
that it's like
opinion.
these are my thoughts, right?
Yeah, this is all your
So
thoughts.
if Dave Berry walked in my church better treat him the exact same way we would treat the Pope if he walked into my church. We should not treat anyone any different just because they have tattoos or they're part of a community that we typically.
Yeah, but
again,
you
the Christian
probably
church
treat the
doesn't.
Pope like a regular guy because you're not Catholic.
Well, we're not, but,
I'm joking.
but it doesn't matter. He's the Pope, right? So like everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, it's the Pope."
Yeah.
No, I mean we should be like, "Oh, it's Dave Berry." Like we should treat both of them the same, right?
Okay,
God doesn't call us to elevate one person over another, and that's just. I mean, we did this review, right? And it's called a 360 review, and I did it with my church board. And the best compliment I got, right? And it's not about the compliments, but it's the way, like, if I'm leading my church a certain way, the church will model the behavior, right? That I'm
as the head.
and
of the church.
the person, the feedback the person got, and these were all anonymous, I didn't know who they were, but it said, "I love that our pastor treats the homeless person the same way he teaches, it's the same way he treats the person with the PhD." Because we have both, right? We have people who have doctoral degrees and are college professors, and then we have people who are coming right off the street, right? That may be suffering some mental illness.
Yeah.
And we don't treat either one of those any different.
But so do you judge people on their tattoos? Because some tattoos are pretty fucking vulgar. I've done a lot of them. You know what I'm saying? We're
I've
we're
seen
out
a few
there.
of those.
Now, if you've seen somebody walking in with said tattoo, would you judge them on their looks? Once again, your opinion, because a lot of Christians do. A lot.
Yeah.
Dave, if my art is Dave, if I went sleeveless with shorts on, a lot of people would probably look at my tattoos too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But now, and I've seen it. We've been out there. People look.
Mm-hmm.
They always look. All right. Now, if Dave was to walk into a church that's against that, they probably wouldn't even. They make him sit in the back almost. You know, I've been to some of them churches that would be like, "Oh no, you need to kind of go off to the back." All right. So, why do you think some Christians, in your opinion, focus on them maybe the vulgar tattoos or a gang tattoo or anything like that, and not give us tattooists or people with tattoos that second chance? Why do you think that they come to them exact opinion right off the bat, like judging a book by its cover? Why in your opinion, why is it? Does it go back to that tradition, or?
Yeah, I think you go back to tradition and you go back to fear. Sometimes we're as all of us are like this, right? All of us fear things that we just don't know. And when a Dave Berry walked, now I'm not going to say this about our church. Again, I think
Dave,
Dave,
you're getting a lot of shade.
because you used his name. So, but if he came to our church, Dave would be welcomed, right? Here's what I know, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
I like.
Yeah, you know that.
I know he's got. Well, I won't say one of his tattoos, but one of his tattoos. I'm knocking the shelf over again, so I apologize. But one of his tattoos that's on the side of his head would be frowned upon almost everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But if Dave came to our church, he's going to be welcomed, right? And they may even try to give him a hug, for crying out loud. Which some Christians are that weird too, right? They want to hug you just to make you feel welcome.
We're not huggers, bro.
But
Don't take it too far, man.
Yeah, you go back to tradition, what people learned over time, even society, what society says about tattoos. You know what I'm saying? Like whenever you see mugshots and stuff like that, one of the things they try to highlight on people is like, oh, they have a tattoo, like, right?
Yeah, they say that.
That's an identifier, and so I think sometimes it's that fear of either breaking tradition. This is frowned upon in the church. You're still going to get that, and I can't speak for every Christian. Because I know, again, at our church, you know, you're going to be welcomed regardless on what you look like. And so none of that doesn't matter for us.
You brought up the example of, like you said, you're against alcohol, but you're not against the alcoholic.
Yeah.
And if a Dave walked into your church, you expect him to be treated with the same respect and consideration as anybody else. Being Christ-like, I get that. But what I want to know is, in your opinion, do you feel interpreting the scripture? Do you feel that the Bible is interpreted in a manner? In your personal opinion, you have tattoos. So, what's your interpretation of the scriptures? Is it against it or is it not?
I do not believe it is, and I think that when it comes to scripture and specifically Jesus, again, we got to talk about Jesus because even Jewish people believe in some of the Old Testament, right? But they don't believe in Jesus. So there's even a difference there.
Well, then they treat him as like he was just another disciple.
He was another disciple. He wasn't the Messiah.
Yeah.
They're still waiting on the Messiah.
Yeah.
And so even that, like you really do have to look.
I think I can't say it for everybody, but Jewish is one of them cultures that are like pretty hardcore against tattooing. The older rabbis.
There's several. When you said religion and tattoos, I was like, oh. I can only speak on what.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to break that
out
about Christianity. Hopefully, I can get some more. What I'm trying to do with this is probably get some more and get me outreach to somebody, a few different people, a denomination that's against tattoos, and get them out here too. You know, and I want to get some Jewish or where it's part of the culture, maybe get some Hindus, or I want to get a lot of different religious people on this form of the podcast, on the religion and tattoos. So that's going to be my main thing.
There's an interesting, because we talk about scripture, right? And what you asked, I think the question was, what does the Bible say?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, a lot of people will say, like, you defile your body with tattoos, right? Because again, they're going back to that Leviticus verse. Yeah. But again, in Mark, this is the same. This is right after, Jesus was talking to the Pharisees.
Leviticus. Let me get this right. Leviticus is Old Testament, and then the stuff you're saying from Mark is from when Jesus kind of came into the picture, the New Testament.
Correct. And so. Now the thing about we won't go into all that.
I mean, you're bringing out the.
Let's don't do all that.
But this is Jesus, right? The Pharisees just tried to call the disciples out for not washing their hands.
Yeah, he said they're not washing their hands. Yeah.
But
please, people, wash your hands before you eat.
Yeah, you gotta wash your hands. COVID. And then so Jesus goes back, and he's going back with his disciples, right? So these are the people closest to him. Right, these are the people who are hanging on every word that he says. They're spending the next 3 years of Jesus' life with him. They're journeying with him. They're hearing the Sermon on the Mount firsthand. Right, these are his disciples. They're the closest people to him, and they're still knuckleheads. And so Jesus is saying this to the crowd. Right, first he says, "Listen to me, everyone, and understand this: nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them."
So that would touch down a lot of stuff,
right? And that's to the crowd, and then he goes back with the disciples, because it says after he left the crowd and he entered into the house, right, his disciples' house, and they then asked him about the parable he was just sharing, and this is him talking to his disciples, right? Sometimes Jesus cracks me up, but he's like, "Are you so dull, right? Don't you see that nothing that enters a person from the outside can defile them? For it doesn't go into their heart, but into their stomach and then out of the body."
So that goes a little beyond tattoos, honestly. I mean, tattoos are skin deep. They're not even, they only go to the third layer of skin anyways. All right, so you're saying like nothing from the outside can penetrate their heart. So I mean, that goes beyond tattoos. That right there, the way I interpret that is stop looking down upon prostitutes, stuff like that, because nothing that goes into their body can penetrate their heart.
Right. So,
And so that's what you're saying about tattoos. You don't think it's a sin or anything like that, because
Right.
your interpretation of the Bible is nothing that goes on the outside of our body can penetrate into our heart.
Yeah, but I don't want to say, so I'm going to be very careful here. I don't want to say tattoos aren't a sin, because almost anything can become a sin.
Addictions. We've talked about this. Like I said, this is my brother. We've
Yeah.
talked about this before. If it becomes, I got what you're saying.
So what the
Yeah.
question becomes is like, where is the person's heart in it?
Yeah.
Because after he says that, right, he says, what comes out of a person is what defiles them, for it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come, right? And he's talking about sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, all these different things that can come from within, right? Those are things that are coming from the heart. And so even with tattoos, right, where is your heart in what you're doing, right? Because even the worst of all sinners, right, can get a tattoo for a purpose that's evil,
Like-
right?
Yeah. But they could also get that memorial for their mom.
But yeah. Well, but hold on here, because here's where I was going with that. So like I got tattoos before I was a Christian.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you got like
this
a
one up
devil
here
looking
is
creature
yeah,
on your arm.
it's like a demon.
Yeah, yeah.
But then
I
I
did.
I became a Christian, right? And so my heart was not in the right place when I did this. I probably, as a Christian, wouldn't do it, right? Because of my own personal conviction.
Because it looks a little bit like a demon.
Right.
And here's the other part to it. It's an art too, and a lot of people, for one, it's an art. You guys are called artists,
Yeah,
right?
tattoo
artists.
So there's
Well,
an
we
art to
identify us as artists. Some people don't think that we're
Yeah.
artists.
Vandals.
That's a whole nother episode
Vandals.
there. That's a
That's a
whole
good
nother
term. I like
episode
that.
there.
So, quick question. That's not to throw you off. Like you said, you got a tattoo
Yeah.
before you were religious of a
Yeah.
demon inside. Did you ever like personally consider like covering it up?
So I do want to cover it up, but only because it's not a great tattoo. It was one that was done very early on, and
It was
it's
a learning process.
Yeah.
It was a learning process.
bro, I wasn't gonna throw you under the
We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. That's what
So,
we're going to
yeah.
do. We're going to talk about
So
it.
I want to get it covered up just because it's up.
And we're gonna post pictures of this tattoo as well on the.
No, don't get me wrong. We'll call it out.
I was gonna
It was
throw it
horrible. Demon looking. It was a tribal dragon from 15 years ago. I don't even know. Don't call it. It's an old one. So I'm pretty sure I used some Karasumi ink on there. I don't even know. That's some old stuff. But so it's a demon, and that's what I was trying to say. Like, do people look at you strange when you do wear your like a sleeveless shirt and you tell somebody you're a pastor? Do you get some funny looks?
So here's a funny story. So when I first felt like God was calling me to become a pastor, I started taking classes, right?
Yeah.
There's like administrative side of being a pastor is much more complicated than I think what some people think. But so
that too.
yeah, so I once I answered the call to be a pastor, and I started taking classes. It was either my first or second. I think it was my second class, right? Second class. It was in the winter, so I had a hoodie on. And the class talked for probably 30 minutes about how Christians shouldn't have tattoos.
So you was a class that talked about Christians not having
It wasn't
tattoos.
This wasn't part of the curriculum. It was just, I think someone in the class had asked,
Yeah.
and then they all got in on the conversation.
Okay.
And you know, I'm
So you've
new.
been here before.
I'm
You had-
new to all this, so I'm just sitting over there like, so I'm pulling my sleeves down, like I'm trying to hide it. I'm like, I'm about to get kicked out of here already. I just started. But so I say that because I did not give up. Like I fully believe that's not.
So when you was in that class, though, did it come out that you had tattoos?
It did eventually, because I was in several classes with those guys.
So, but not
and-
during that. So that.
Yeah, that
So-
one I was still trying to get to know people.
So
you know.
that's a big thing with me. I'm never going to be ashamed of my tattoos,
Yeah.
and that's why I think that's touching down what I'm saying. Like some Christians are so against them, but us, like as a tattoo artist and somebody that has tattoos, I'm never going to be ashamed. I'll walk into your church, your house, anywhere with my tattoo showing, because I shouldn't have to be ashamed of my body.
Well, and I'm not either anymore. I think at the time, like I felt like if I exposed myself to it, that me becoming a pastor in a church that I really loved was going to be over. And so once I got the lay of the land and felt like, okay, now I have some skin in the game, I can talk about it. And in fact, we did Written in Ink for a little while at Steel Rod, which was a ministry that my wife and I were doing, where we would come and just ask people to share the stories behind their tattoos. And so like that, out of that, my denomination asked me to come and speak about it. And so I got to speak in front of a whole room full of pastors and leaders about tattoos and specifically about Written in Ink. And I shared that story where I said, the same thing. I thought about walking away because, I'm in.
So you was already feeling outcasted, and that's what a lot of tattoo people do, and that's where we as tattoo artists could be a little bit better. Like we just instantly go ahead and like, no, Christians don't like us.
Yeah, we're not all about it.
Christians don't like us at all. Christians don't like us. Well, there's some.
So in that, after I presented it and talked about it and shared that story, someone stood up and said, "Hey, we just want you to know that we're thankful that you didn't walk away." And so I think that's the thing, whether you're a Christian or not, and whether you have tattoos and not, you have to be willing to come to the table and talk about it. And number one, you got to love each other, regardless on whether you approve or disapprove of tattoos. Because some people, they may not approve of it, but it has nothing to do with Christianity. They may just not like the look. They whatever.
Yeah.
And
but
so,
you accept the person, not the tattoo.
Exactly.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Christians should accept the person, not the tattoos. I mean, tattoos not for everybody.
But
we got a lot of people.
Let me challenge you a little bit on that, right? How can I accept the person covered in tattoos without accepting their tattoos? That they're part of the person.
I don't like every aspect of tattooing. Okay,
Right.
Myself personally, I like black and gray tattoos. I like black and gray realism.
Yeah.
It comes to some of these color tattoos. I just don't like the art.
You mean ugly tattoos is what?
Well, no. They're done
Like demon
gorgeous.
tattoos.
They're done gorgeously tattooed. You know what I'm saying? Especially these days, tattooers came a long way since demonic dragons. So, and they're gorgeously done tattoos. Are saturated. When I look at tattoos and I say, hey, I don't. So I guess I misworded it. I shouldn't have said don't accept the tattoo. I don't have to like their tattoos to be their friend.
Right.
Okay. So myself, I have a lot of crappy tattoos on me. A lot of tattooers do that have been in the game a little bit because we let everybody. Oh yeah, we're this tattoo. Yeah, we're all test dummies. Everybody was a test dummy. 15. I've been tattooing for a little over 19 years. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's a test dummy. Okay, so I don't like the tattoo. I don't have to like their art.
Yeah.
I don't have to like their tattoos. I don't have to like that specific design, but I like that individual.
Yeah.
Okay. Some people got ball gag chicks on their legs. That is not done good. I'm not going to say anybody's names. Fucking Dave. But I like Dave. Dave's cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like some of the tattoos. So, and I think that I want to bridge that gap between like Christianity and tattoo artists and stuff is a lot of more people should see it like that. Like, I don't have to like their tattoos, but that doesn't make them a bad person. Tattooing has came a long way though, because in nursing school now people are allowed to have tattoos below a sleeve or something.
Yeah.
Now it's becoming more popular. I don't know that word.
More socially accepted.
Socially accepted.
Because there's that shift in mentality and training or tradition, right? It's not criminals and drug dealers and all that with tattoos anymore.
I mean, we still got our criminals.
you got nurses.
I got what you're saying, bro.
Teachers, I see teachers all the time with them now.
Yeah.
Teachers have them.
Yeah.
And back in my day, teachers, I mean, if they had them, they were hidden. But you don't see that now. It's more acceptable across, again, different
Yeah, I think in
cultures.
general society is more acceptable definitely now than it was 15 years ago. Religion is where you get the pushback more now than just regular society. One other question I did have, and I'm not too religious. I don't know the scriptures that well, but one thing I always do hear of because this topic comes up a lot. Did Jesus have a tattoo? Some people want to interpret certain scriptures and say, "Oh, well, Jesus might have had a tattoo."
So, yeah, speaking of that, I think I know what you're talking about. Didn't like something light up in his arm or something?
It's in Revelations, and it talks about having like written on his thigh or something. There's something written on his thigh or something along those lines, and I think that that it's hard to interpret because it's Revelations.
Yeah.
And again, you go back to the heart of it. Like,
what was it like? Something kind of.
It said it was. I can't remember where it was written now. Because Revelation, that's a book right there that'll get you every time. Because it's very hard to translate the meaning in some of Revelation. Because I think sometimes people, again, it's like a bunch of literal stuff versus reading it metaphorically. So like it's very hard to interpret. So could he? I don't know, but in my opinion, it doesn't change who Jesus is. It doesn't.
No.
It doesn't affect what he came to do.
In the early ages of Christianity, before the big ordeal where everybody goes straight to the Christian Crusades and you guys killed masses. Okay.
Yeah, those were Catholic crusades.
I'm not gonna. But before all that. I read when I was doing this history assignment and stuff. I read that Christians actually would mark themselves with a little cross tattoo to get into some of these hidden congregations. Because right after Jesus died, it was like banned. They didn't want Christianity.
Yeah.
All right, so I read that they would mark themselves with a little dot or a little symbolic thing to get them into these hidden worship. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you get into what's called the ichthus symbol, which it's like it looks like a fish.
Okay, yeah, the fish. Everybody knows the fish. It's on back cards.
Yeah.
Sometimes you cuss some people out. You know?
And then, like in that fish, there's a cross that's hidden, and that's how they would like identify it. And I don't remember specifically if they were tattooed, but I know that was an image that was shown so that you knew either it was a gathering place for Christians or something along those lines. So it's very possible that it could have been the case. I'm definitely not a historian, that's for sure.
Yeah, me neither. So Jesus didn't have any tattoos in your opinion?
I'll ask him when I get there.
Yeah. Well, then we won't fucking know.
Maybe
Come to the dream and let us know or something.
Then we won't fucking know.
Maybe we can compare, like if he did.
If he did, you compare tattoos?
We'll do written and in heaven.
Oh, okay. I thought you forgot everything when you went to heaven.
So does the scripture actually say the word tattoo, or does it just say mark?
So the word tattoo didn't even come about until like the 17th century. So the Bible wouldn't have said anything about tattoo.
So it just says mark your body.
I think I was trying to do a little bit of research on like what the original translation, and it's more of like scarring your body.
Yeah.
scarring your body.
I mean, tattoos back then were more stuck to the tribe, like tribals of Africa or Indian culture, the Native American cultures and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think they were burned or cut.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you still see that even today.
It's scarification.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother artwork. That's a whole nother artwork, guys. That's the whole one of the things I don't like. But I like you guys to do it, but I don't like it. But,
Well, see,
things I'm not for it. But I'm not going to judge somebody else for doing anything.
it's not me.
horrible people. You're all horrible.
Yeah.
You're all horrible.
You need Jesus.
We all need Jesus.
So,
Well, can I ask you one?
yeah.
What's the overall perception in the tattoo community of Christians beyond just that? The tattoo community in general feels like we're against them. That we.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I for a couple of years, I took a little hiatus from tattooing. I actually worked for Shepherd Community Center and stuff. And I went to one of our award shows at the Vogue. We just had a little award show at the Vogue and stuff. I went there. And Rick Hansen, the founder of Still Rod Tattoo, he was doing the host and stuff. He bounced off of me a little bit because when people get up on the mic, you want to bounce them off. But he was like, oh, you know, this is Eric, everybody knows Eric, blah, blah, blah. He's too good for a tattoo community now. He became a Christian. And I'm like, asshole. But I didn't care. I'll never deny my faith, you know what I'm saying? I don't care. But I think in our world that the older Christian people have demonized us for so long that it's stuck in our traditions too. Mm-hmm. Like when you come in here, you don't see the cross and this and that. It's become more popular. A very popular artist named Tim Beck out of Peoria, Illinois. He's an avid Christian, and he's a very popular artist. Great traditional tattoo artist, you know what I'm saying? He's an avid Christian. It's becoming, like you said, a little more acceptable in our line, but we still have that tradition also to where I think, and I mean, you see a lot of news. You see nowadays everything's so onto your phone and right now. So if I was going out and I walked into a church, I could record everybody's reaction when they look at me. Mm-hmm. If I had my sleeves off, or if, let's say I had tattoos on my face and stuff, I could record that and I could be like, oh, look at all these disgusting looks that I got. You know what I'm saying? And we still get that. And we're not going to say everybody that looks at us is Christians that look at us dirty, because there's probably some that's not Christians that look at us dirty. But so back to the question is, I think that we as a tattoo community just have it instilled that we're not accepted by Christians. A lot of your older Christians or your wealthier people and stuff, they just don't like them. They don't like tattoo people. Okay, I mean, Chris's mom, she's an older one. She don't like tattoos.
Yeah, my mom.
She does not like tattoos. Our grandma did not like tattoos.
My mom was old school.
when I got my armband, my Scooby-Doo armband, she asked me how my soul was going to come out of my body. And I said, I got plenty of holes that my soul can come out of the body, okay? Because it went all the way around. Uh-huh. And she asked me that. She was just like, well, how's your soul going to leave your body? And I'm like, you know, our grandma, she had the crosses and stuff. She wasn't a very Christian-like person, but I think that she believed in stuff, that southern way. She's from a little hillbilly town in Kentucky, Harlan, Kentucky. I think that what it was. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, Harlan, Kentucky, little coal mining town. God. But so she had her ways, and I think that's why, man. That's why a lot of us tattoo artists are kind of just as guilty as Christians in calling you guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, they don't like us because we got tattoos. I can't go over. So we're gonna get to wrapping this up real quick. So the last question, the last thing that we want to talk about is how can we bridge the gap between the two different communities? Like, how can we just stop all that nonsense about, oh, all Christians are this, all tattoo artists are that, all Christians hate tattoo art, or tattooists, or people with tattoos, and then people with tattoos, and then people, Christians being like tattoo artists. How do you go about bridging that, man?
So I think, and here's a story I'll share. When you asked me to do Rick's funeral.
Yeah. I tell you what I tell you. Beforehand, I said, man, you're going to go up against a tough crowd because nobody in here believe in God.
Yeah, and here's the thing that from the Christian standpoint, and I think it works both ways. I think we have to go into each other's space, right? And what I mean by that is, we have to.
We try to touch me.
not your no square, but just going into like the places where those two groups gather, right? And I don't mean just coming to church, right? That's not that's what I'm talking about. I mean places where you can build community, where you get to know people.
Well, see, and another thing is, like, I think that's a good way to start talking to one another. We don't have. I could see somebody, if you're a pastor or if you're a Christian and you're at a coffee shop and you see a dude tattooed up in the corner, I'm drinking his little pink drink from Starbucks or
whatever. Don't judge.
And they're not that good. So, yeah, so we can interact with each other more, So, I think that's a good way. Like, we just got to get to know one another more. You got to create opportunities, because as a tattooist, as somebody with tattoos, and now I am a Christian, I don't go to church every Sunday. Okay, hell, I don't know if I've been to church in a few years. And like Perez, he said that it's not real religious. It doesn't mean that we can't get along. It doesn't mean we can't have good conversations. It doesn't mean that just because if a tattoo artist doesn't have to be religious for a Christian to talk to them. I'm sure that you have a lot of people that you talk to that's not religious. Mm-hmm. But
well, church done right, you should be talking to people who don't believe.
Yeah, but in the tattoo world, we don't want to hear all the preaching. Mm-hmm. Don't come to us preaching about stuff. We want to sit down and have regular ass conversations.
So I don't know if you remember me bringing, so right after Rick's funeral, or it might have been right before, I can't remember, but you did a fundraiser at the shop.
Maybe. I mean, I did do it. Yeah, that was before.
It was before.
Yeah.
So I was leading a small group, right? We would gather at my house.
Oh, I remember that.
And I challenged my small group to go and participate in the fundraising.
I remember you bringing a bunch of Christian people up.
So we did. And the funny part was, like, I was comfortable, right? I was talking to people, and I was watching my small group who...
Well, we grew up a little different, man.
None of them have probably set foot into a tattoo shop prior to
I remember how awkward that moment
and
was.
they were so uncomfortable, and I think that's part of it, right?
They kind of sat back in the back.
I had one or two that tried to talk. Tom, he's the guy that has a PhD. He tried, and most of them, though, I think were just like, I don't know what to do. and I think that's part of it, right? We have to be willing to go into those spaces where we're uncomfortable, where we don't have all the answers, and where we're just looking to get to know people, get to build relationships. I just want to know Dave Barry, right? I just want to know Perez. I just want to know my brother a little bit better. Like you just
two different lifestyles. No,
like it's all about. You asked me what my role was at the community center earlier, right? It's building relationship, and I think we have to seek to do that first.
But can you guys do it in a manner to where it doesn't feel like you're trying to make us go to church? That's what a lot of us have issues with. Like if we sat down, we were chilling, and we was all chilling and stuff. That's fine. But a lot, and this might be my personal opinion, but you guys try to force God on you, force Jesus, force that, like, oh, you shouldn't do that, it's against this, it's against that, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. A lot of people, I can't say you, but a lot of people. And to bridge our community, you just got to talk to it normal.
I mean, we should do that with everybody. I think that's the thing. Like, I don't ever want to feel like I'm forcing it on somebody, but if someone opens a door, I'll walk through it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If they come to you, just know, like you said, just having a preacher there at the funeral, you said that you'll be there to talk to you if anybody does want to talk to you. You know what I'm saying? As a pastor or whatever. So I think that's where I think some Christians take it too far is you want to force God upon us, and we just want to have a regular conversation, play some Madden, stay up till 8 o'clock in the morning playing Fortnite.
Well, shot at me, right? Just no getting back. Okay.
Yeah, that's all it is. We just need to bridge the gap and stuff. So we're gonna do a quick outro. Once again, this is Tattoo Center's first episode of the Tattoo Center's podcast. We brought on Pastor No from Shepherd Community Center on the Lower East Side of Indianapolis. We got Perez from Perez Production, Loose Screws. Loose Screws something. Entertainment. There you go, Loose Screws Entertainment. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, follow. If you want us to bring Pastor No back to answer some of your questions, don't be.
Are we gonna take an offering still?
Offering.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Pass the collection plate.
I gotta pay him for this, just so you know. That's how Christian he is. I have to pay him for this. It's just costing me like, I don't know. He's pretty cheap.
Well, you got me a dime, dude. We'll call it even.
And what's your church's info in case anybody wants to get a hold of you or visit your
reach
church?
out to
Yeah, so our church is at 4107 East Washington Street, and the number is 317-375-0203. And I'm available most times of the day. If anyone has any questions, needs a pastor, our services are available. We've done a lot of funerals for people who don't have a church and things like that. So there's lots of ways we like to, like I said, it's all about building relationships. So whatever that looks like to you.
He said he's not going to force religion down your throat.
No.
So like, subscribe, follow. Thanks to our lovely people in the back doing all the video stuff for us. Only one of them though. The other one just sat there and didn't do
We're gonna pray for her.
nothing. We're gonna pray for her. We're gonna pray for her right now. And then that's it, man.
And that's a wrap.
Is that a wrap?
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Cut that shit. I gotta go spend that one.